Good morning everyone and welcome to our Cabinet meeting. I'm Councillor Simon Hennig, Leader of Durham County Council and Chair of this meeting. This meeting is taking place on Wednesday the 10th of February 2021 and is being recorded live to the Council's website, where it will be available to be viewed for a minimum of 6 months. Please be aware that any footage from the meeting can be used in subsequent media broadcasts. I would like to give a warm welcome to members, officers and any members of the public or media who are watching the live feed of this meeting. I think everyone's aware of the housekeeping rules for us all to follow to ensure the meeting runs as efficiently as possible. However, please note that if I lose my connection, Councillor Alan Napier, Deputy Leader of the Council, will take over in my absence until connection is restored. So before I move on to the formal business on the agenda, I think I can confirm that we've received no apologies and all members of the Cabinet are present. We have had member requests to ask questions as follows: on item 4 from Councillor Wilkes and Councillor Shields, on item 5 from Councillor Shuttleworth, and on item 11 from Councillor Temple. In each case, I will take the question immediately after the Corporate Director has introduced the item. So if I can then turn to item 1 on the agenda, public questions. I understand that no questions were submitted in advance of the meeting. In accordance with procedure rules, therefore, there are no questions for this part of the meeting. Item 2, minutes. Can I have a mover and seconder to the minutes of the 13th of January 2021, please?
Move the minutes, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second minutes, Chairman.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. The minutes have been moved and seconded. If there is any dissent, can you please indicate that through the chat function? No indications have been received, so I can therefore confirm that the minutes are agreed. If I can then move to item 3, declarations of interest. Can I ask please if there are any declarations from members? If not, we'll move on. Item 4, Townsend Villages investment plan. As I said before, I will invite Councillor Wilkes and then Councillor Shields to ask their questions in a minute, but first I'm going to ask Amy Harhoff, Corporate Director of Regeneration, Economy and Growth, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. This report follows the Council's agreement to the Townsend Villages strategy in October 2020, and the purpose of this report is to follow from that strategy to set out our proposed Townsend Villages investment plan. This report also sets out a proposal to further support the investment plan with an additional investment directly to our area action partnerships to support the response to COVID. As an integrated approach to place-based regeneration, our Townsend Villages programme has identified a fairly conservative estimate of £750 million of investment over the last 6 years to support our towns and villages. And this has included a range of investments such as bringing into use reused derelict buildings, transport and homes and communities, amongst others. This is part of a long-standing priority of the Council, although its investment will be absolutely critical in the context of the recovery from the global pandemic. By adopting an integrated approach to place-based strategy, it allows us to bring together in a coherent way investments across the county to support the different types of investments that will reflect the needs of our individual communities, as well as having a strategic impact across the county. The strategy, as agreed by Cabinet in October 2020, was also agreed and supported by all 14 of our area action partnerships, which cover the geography across the county and are open to the public. A key objectives of towns and villages is about ensuring added value to investment. And within section 17 of the report, you'll see the 5 key themes that are agreed in the strategy, under which all key investments will come from. And that includes strategic investments, housing and communities, environment and health, the built environment, and transport and connectivity. And the strategy also provides a future context in which we'll make investments to ensure the best connectivity between our communities. I also wanted to take the opportunity to highlight in this report the importance of our rural communities, who are often sparsely populated, and includes areas such as in the Pennine, the Dales, to some of our larger villages within our former coalfield communities, and indeed our rural communities themselves represent a very diverse and different need. As part of agreeing the strategy, Cabinet is also asked to agree 20 million to support investment for our most disadvantaged communities, as well as an additional £5 million as a result of our engagement with the Area of Action partnerships, which will be for those areas to directly invest in the impacts from the pandemic. The full engagement with the Area of Action partnerships and across the county is set out in section 20 to 23 of this report. And I would also highlight to Cabinet that the full investment plan is set out in Appendix 2 with a summary within the document between sections 24 to 30, which cover a range of investments across the county. The recommendations of this report are set out in section 16. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Can I then invite Councillor Wilkes, please, to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair, and can I just pass on to all Cabinet members and officers thanks for the work you have been doing over the last 12 months. I know it's not been easy and the weather's not helping us at the moment either, but I do feel that everybody's working hard and I'd just like to say thank you for that. I'm assuming that Councillor Marshall will be responding to my question. We've waited 2 years for any realistic amount of the town and villages funding to be spent. And we've waited 2 years for even the scoping of the regeneration of Framwellgate Moor Front Street, which hasn't even started yet. Indeed, many schemes remain unscoped after 2 years, and despite the delays caused by COVID, it appears others have now been added and pushed in front of Framwellgate Moor. We've been told all funding is allocated, but it appears no one has been consulted, including local councillors, on the extent of any works. So can you confirm how much has been allocated to spend in Framwellgate Moor and on what? And if you can't tell me this, how is it possible to have allocated any money? The Q4 Framwellgate Moor work is actually down for 2022 now. So 3 years since the fund was set up and many more years since we proposed it. Is this the date the works will actually be completed or the date you expect a scheme to have been designed by? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilkes, for your question. And if I can invite Councillor Carl Marshall, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Economic Regeneration, to respond, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Wilkes for his question and the opportunity to clarify how we're seeking to deliver on the Town and Villages programme. It's important to be clear that the Town and Villages investment programme is one of a number of economic priorities the Council have progressed and part of the £750 million regeneration programme right across the county. The report before Cabinet today sets out a new approach to ensure that each and every one of our towns and villages is helped to recover from the economic, community and health challenges experienced over the last 10 months, particularly some of our most deprived communities who have been impacted disproportionately through the pandemic. We've built an evidence base. This will continue to develop so we can realign council budgets to get more for our communities and use the extra money to ensure we deliver against the greatest need. This is available across County Durham with a £300,000 allocation to each AAP for them to determine exactly how it's spent. The programme as set out today builds on over 1,000 consultation comments reflecting the issues and priorities raised through the significant consultation that took place in October and November of last year. You will see the programme identifies a range of issues that the Council will tackle using its existing budgets or by working with partners to focus on the areas that need help, as well as utilising the additional 25 million allocated, which includes the Neighbourhood Parades project, a core allocation of 2.75 million to help drive these types of improvements forward, which are a priority for all of us. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, would it be possible to seek clarity in respect of the answer, please?
I think if there's something that Councillor Marshall hasn't answered, I would suggest that you carry on that as by way of written correspondence, if that's okay.
Well, I'd just like to say, Chair, that I do think that for the sake of the people who live in Framwellgate Moor, does Councillor Marshall accept that, having expected to see this scheme brought forward, to now see it pushed back behind other schemes is most unfortunate? And is he willing to work with me to try and get this scheme brought forward quicker, more efficiently, so that people don't have to wait quite as long as they has been doing, and also as it looks like we are going to have to wait?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marshall, do you want to come back quickly on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I'll happily pick up a meeting with Councillor Wilkes outside of the meeting to talk about these local priorities and how they fit into the Town and Villages programme. Clearly, it's a large programme, which I'm going to talk about in a little while, and there is an allocation in the programme, like Councillor Wilkes has highlighted, for shop parades. So I'll pick that up outside of the meeting with him, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, that's much appreciated. Thank you very much, Councillor Marshall. Can I then invite Councillor Shields, please, to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Alan Shields, leader of the Durham Independent Group and also leader of the Durham Said Independents, and councillor for the Ledgate and Medley Division. Can I first of all echo the sentiments from Councillor Mark Wilkes, thanking all members of the Cabinet and all officers for their extreme difficulty in working collectively together during this unprecedented time. Chair, I make no apologies for being parochial with this question. I would respectfully ask for clarification for the rationale in determining the huge significant differences in the allocation of long-term planned capital investment programme across County Durham between 2021 and 25. The proposed capital investment for the Derwent Valley, with a population of 4.6 thousand people, of £6.8 million over the 4 years, equates to investment per head of population of £147, which is the second lowest investment per head of population across the whole of County Durham, Teesdale being the lowest in the county at a paltry £52 per head of population. The investment into Stanley, with a population of circa 34,000, of £10,800 million, equates to investment per head of population of just over £300. In comparison, the planned investment into other AAP areas, namely Durham and Bishop Auckland Shildon, equates to more than £3,800 per head of population and £3,100 per head of population, respectively. This huge disparity in planned long-term investment is unjustifiable, and the residents and community across the Derwent Valley and Derwentside, who already believe that they are the forgotten areas of County Durham, will have that confirmed if this recommendation is approved by the Cabinet. Much has been made of the challenge to the current Conservative government's intentions to level up the country. The question I pose to Durham County Council's Cabinet is, when do you propose to start levelling up the county? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you again. If I can ask Councillor Marshall, please, to answer that question.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Shield for bringing this question forward this morning. The Town and Villages programme is there to ensure we can identify issues and priorities raised by our communities and help deliver against these priorities in a coordinated way. The programme is designed to ensure that all partners work consistently, ensure investments that maximise the outcome for our residents. Key to the success of the Towns and Villages is working in partnership, realigning existing budgets to resolve local issues and using the additional 25 million identified to ensure that we do what we can to level up for County Durham. We're at the start of the process and will continue to identify more investment across the county, whether that is via the council working proactively with local social housing providers to ensure we get the right houses in the right places, or investment in our town centres, helping our hospitality and retailers. It's crucial that across County Durham we work together to ensure we see the levels of investment from government over and above what the local council fund, and in doing so ensure the county is able to deliver on an aspiration of levelling up. As a council, we've recognised that we need an integrated approach to local regeneration. I believe, as we did with our business recovery grant, the approach we adopting is national best practice, providing that extra bespoke support at a time when it's most needed. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Marshall. If I can again thank Councillors Wilkes and Shield for their questions, and can I now invite Councillor Marshall to speak to the recommendations, please?
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to start by thanking the team for the tremendous work they've done engaging with our communities right across the county and our partners in bringing forward this plan today. Over the past 10 years, the council's continued to prioritise economic development and regeneration of the county to ensure that our businesses and people have the best opportunities possible. Our commitment has been unprecedented despite dealing with enormous financial pressures, including austerity and the loss of the regional funding streams. Just imagine what we'd be able to do if we continued with the 50 million plus dedicated pot that we used to have from One North East per year just for County Durham. As a Cabinet portfolio holder, I'm immensely proud to bring forward to Cabinet the approval of the 25 million Towns and Villages investment plan, which includes an additional 5 million commitment to regeneration of communities right across every corner of County Durham. The funding will ensure that we achieve the optimal outcome for our communities to improve the lives of those hit hardest by the pandemic and acting as a catalyst to lever in even more investment. It will also ensure that the significant money already committed through working with our partners and through our own budgets delivers on the needs and aspirations of our communities in every town and village. Towns and Villages is more than a £25 million investment plan. It's a new way of working with our communities in delivering against the changing needs and challenges we all now face. This is just the start of a process, one which will continue to develop using our AAPs to ensure we link opportunities to ensuring our most disadvantaged communities see investment and benefit, that we find solutions addressing the challenges identified by communities for their long-term recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. The Cabinet report recognises that significant regeneration is well underway across many parts of the county. Currently, we have a 750 million commitment to projects already in the investment pipeline, and with the potential investment being much, much greater. It currently includes the 10 million investment and the opening of the new rail station at Horden. This opens up the east of the county to access more and better job opportunities. And this catalyst of investment also paves the way to our commitment of the Horden Master Plan, which will identify opportunities to address the challenges currently being faced by that community and build resilience in one of our most disadvantaged areas. Chair, we've secured the long-standing need for regeneration at Festival Walk in Spennymoor. A financial commitment by the Council of over £600,000 has unlocked a multi-million pound transformational project in the town centre and will be completed by further investment across the town. Opportunities to improve connectivity in many parts of the county has been identified, which includes the multi-million pound rollout of the Digital High Street scheme to ensure our centres are more resilient to changing economic patterns. It also focuses on the needs of our rural communities, providing a tailored approach to digital connectivity and the economic opportunities to harness our tourism potential, whilst at the same time benefiting our residents who struggle with connectivity. The importance of our neighbourhood retail areas and the increased reliance by communities on their local businesses during the pandemic is recognised. We've seen our teams working together successfully to scope out what is needed for our individual communities and beginning to deliver benefits in Willington, Sacriston, Shildon, Cornforth, Wheatley Hill, Cowden, Pelton, Black Hill, with other areas scheduled for focused improvement packages. Chair, something we heard at every consultation event was the impact of an empty or derelict building on the pride and confidence of a community. We've already started the process of resolving a number of these, and we'll continue through this programme to bring back and use other ways to create spaces. This is not that has not been possible by leaving it to the private sector. Again, right across the county, we've started the process in Sacriston, Seaham, Easington, Shildon, Spennymoor and Stanley, with other buildings being tackled in Newton, Aycliffe, Towlaw and Stanhope. Our commitment has resulted in a quickening in the pace of change within our centres and communities. However, during recent engagement with both residents and businesses via the Area Action Partnerships, there was a clear message that the approach of Towns and Villages is right, but there's a need for further action. We recognise that our communities have different issues and opportunities, and through Townsend Villages we'll ensure we have a localised response based on evidence drawn upon not only council spending, but also the important investments made by our communities, housing providers, town and parish councils, property owners, and a host of other organisations that we are working with. To ensure that our promise to our towns and villages delivered, we will continue to engage with communities via the EAPs to ensure that our priorities meet the needs and aspirations of people, and sense check our own evidence base to ensure that it reflects reality on the ground. Following the overwhelming support for the approach reported from our communities during the recent EAP events, I'm delighted to present to Cabinet the Towns and Villages Investment Plan, in particular the increase of an extra £5 million, and propose that Cabinet agree the recommendations as set out in paragraph 16 of the report. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Marshall. If I can then have a seconder to the report, please. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. The approach to towns and villages recognises that all of our settlements across County Durham are experiencing great change, including as a result of the pandemic. We have seen a change in shopping habits and more recently an increased focus on community resilience and health and well-being. The Towns and Villages programme enables us to have a responsive approach to the changing needs of our communities and provides opportunities to deliver solutions through alignment of council activity and an increased focus on partnership working. During recent consultation with the public, we heard of many situations where our people were living in unsuitable housing conditions. Meeting our residents' housing needs is critical to their quality of life. The Towns and Villages Investment Plan supports programmes which will address this, ensuring that our people have access to safe and suitable housing. But as Councillor Marshall has said, Towns and Villages is about using the investment plans as a catalyst, bringing all of our initiatives together and ensuring that each town, village in our city's needs and challenges are met going forward. Initiatives include a significant investment into Horden, which will at last bring hope to this former mining community whose decline started when it was desolated by its pit closure under Thatcher. That tore the heart out of this community, and then it had the community torn out of its heart with the introduction of the bedroom tax and austerity introduced by the coalition government, which led to properties being dumped into the hands of absent private landlords. And this was replicated in degrees right across the county. Well, we've moved to tackle landlords and force improvements without rented stock in all of our areas facing similar problems through our selective licensing scheme, which we submitted before Christmas, and we now await government to sign off. Also across the county, we are working with partners to address empty homes as part of the Housing Opportunities Fund and are putting into place targeted delivery plans. We are working on community housing schemes brought forward and developed by our communities to provide suitable accommodation for vulnerable families, as well as Green Home Fuel Efficiency Programme to tackle fuel poverty and ensure families have warm and efficient homes, a particular issue in many of our rural and disadvantaged communities. This Towns and Village Investment Plan shows what a very well-run Labour Authority can deliver despite government cuts of over £250 million to its finances over the last 10 years with its failed austerity programme. We are ready, willing and able to move forwards far further very quickly, if and when a mumbled promise of levelling up ever carries a grain of truth. Chair, that's why I'm very happy to second this recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaw. Can I ask if there's anybody else wishing to speak, please?
Yes, Chairman, I tried to put right to speak in the chat, but it's still sending, I think. Councillor Patterson. Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. It's Councillor Patterson from the Crook Division, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services and Rural Issues. And Chairman, with that rural champion hat on, I really welcome this investment plan, and I'd like to thank everyone that's been involved in bringing this forward. In a large and diverse rural county like County Durham, it's really important that we recognise our rural towns and villages are all very different. And whilst there might be some commonality to the challenges they face, they all have very different needs and priorities. The challenges faced in sparse areas such as rural Teesdale can be quite different to the challenges faced in the East Durham Rural Corridor. And it's important that we recognise that it's not necessarily the investment in capital programmes and interventions that's the biggest issue, but rather it's the accessibility and the affordability for many residents to access services and opportunities that brings the greatest challenge. A prime example of this is our fantastic Digital Durham programme, where we've achieved over 96% fibre broadband coverage across the county, but where we still have residents struggling to put food on the table, let alone pay for access to that broadband. Chairman, what this Townsend Villages investment plan does do, it gives us the flexibility to be able to respond to specific needs and challenges right across the county, and by linking it in with the work of the 14 area action partnerships, it's going to make sure that the resource goes directly to where it's needed most. And I'm really proud of the fact that we have an area action partnerships right the way across County Durham. It gives local people a voice and the autonomy to make decisions about them and their communities. And this plan will ensure that we have communities at the heart of that decision-making process that will make sure we can respond to the needs. And I'd just like to reiterate Councillor Marshall's comments that this is a strategy and it's a plan for all. It takes into account the diverse and rural nature of County Durham, yet it focuses the interventions where they're clearly needed most. Chairman, I look forward to working with Councillor Marshall as we move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. I haven't seen anybody else wanting to come in. If I can just say that I was very pleased to be able to attend all 14 of the consultation events that we held in October and November. Although clearly they were virtual events held in online form like this, they did cover all parts of County Durham, and as has already been mentioned, we did get a large number of consultation responses on Townsend Villages, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to increase the budget in terms of an allocation directly to each of those area action partnerships to allow them to focus on the key issues right across County Durham. And I would like to thank everybody who was involved in that consultation in October and November for participating, and I would very much encourage people to be involved around their AAP tables, virtual or otherwise, as we move forward over the next few months and years. Also, I think it's important to reiterate that a number of the strands of the Townsend Villages work go across all communities across County Durham, and it's really important to reiterate that. So yes, there are one or two that specify specific places, and Hordern has already been mentioned by my colleague Councillor Shaw, but many of the strands cut across the whole of County Durham, and that needs to be recognised, and that's only right because there are challenges that are faced, as Councillor Patterson's just said, right across the piece, but there's a diversity of things that are needed, which is why it's right to give an enhanced budget to each of our 14 AAPs so that those different circumstances are taken into account when decisions are made. So again, as I say, if I can thank everybody involved in that consultation and indeed in the preparation of this report, which obviously has followed that consultation so that it's ready to present to Cabinet today and then to move forward. So with that, if I can then turn to the reports and recommendations. As ever, if there is any dissent, can you please indicate that through the chat function? Can I ask if the report is agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah.
Thank you. And no indications have been received, so I can confirm therefore that the report is agreed. So if I can then move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the medium-term financial plan 2021-22 to 2024-25 and revenue and capital budget 2021-22. If I can ask Paul Darby, Interim Corporate Director of Resources, to present the report, and I'll then ask Councillor Shuttleworth to ask his question and then go on from there. Paul.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. This report presents the budget proposals for next year, for 21-22, and the updated forecasts in terms of our medium-term financial plan for the period 21-22 to 24-25, so covering the next 4 years. The report's been prepared against a backdrop of significant uncertainty that exists beyond next financial year as we await the publication of the Comprehensive Spending Review and the implementation of the Fair Funding Review, both of which have been delayed again. The report takes into account the local government finance settlement for 21-22, which we received in late December following the spending round announcements by the Chancellor in November of last year. As members will see, the report provides a very comprehensive and detailed overview of the local government finance settlement and the impact on the council, including an analysis of the core spending power announcements, where additional flexibility on council tax increases has been afforded to local government over the next 2 financial years. A detailed assessment of these announcements is set out in sections 57 to 82 of the report. I would draw members' attention to the fact that the majority of the core spending power increases relate to an expectation from the government that authorities like ourselves increase council tax by 4.99% next year, with additional funding we will receive next year in terms of social care grant being largely offset by the loss of new homes bonus grant funding. I'd also highlight that council's core spending power per dwelling is below the national average. Members will note that there's an additional £15.6 million of funding that's been provided to offset the continuing impact of COVID-19 as we enter into next financial year, and that there's also been an extension of the sales fees and charges income guarantee scheme for a further 3 months into next year. The government's also honoured its commitment to increase funding through the dedicated schools grant for high needs SEND, where members will be aware that we have faced and continue to face significant pressures in that area. The report sets out the financial pressures we are facing and the growth that will be needed next year to address unavoidable budget pressures linked to inflation and demographics, particularly in children's services, where over recent years and continuing into next year we've faced some significant challenges with regards to our looked after children costs. The details of those financial pressures are set out in section 102 of the report. There are, however, some significant investments in frontline services that have been built into the budgets next year, including a continuation of £10 million worth of one-off investments that were built into the budget in the current year, an additional £5 million investment into the Townsend Villages initiative, and £7 million worth of investment in providing support to low-income households. Full details of these investments are set out at section 108 of the report. The budgets do also include £88 million worth of new additional capital expenditure, taking the capital programme to £484 million over the next 4 years. The capital programme, including details of the new additional schemes added and the capital financing requirements linked to the programme, are set out in sections 157 to 177 of the report, with the updated capital strategy and details of the individual schemes set out in detail at appendices 7, 8 and 9 to the report. In terms of the council tax increases, our medium-term financial planning forecasts include a base increase of 1.99% to the council's council tax in each of the next 4 years, and the report also includes proposals to utilise the additional council tax flexibility over next financial year and the year after. A 1% adult social care precept increase has been proposed for 21-22, which will mean that the council's total council tax increase for next year will be 2.99%. By the 31st of March of this year, savings totaling £242 million will have been delivered by the council since 2010. There are new savings proposals totaling £2.2 million factored into the budgets next year, which when added to the previously agreed savings of £3.1 million will mean the service group and savings targets for 21-22 will be £5.3 million next year. There are further £2.4 million of savings plans in place for 22-23, which are also included in the report. Details of the savings included in each of the service grouping areas are set out in sections 179 to 208, with details of the individual proposals across the next 2 financial years included in Appendix 3. Chair, the updated MTFP model, which brings all of this together, is set out at Appendix 6 to the report, and members will note that there is a balanced budget position for next year, with a modest use of budget support reserve of just under £3.8 million required to balance the budget. Members will also note that there is a funding gap of £36.1 million over the next four financial years, meaning that the total savings requirement since 2010, by the time we get to the end of this MTFP planning period, will be £286 million. The budget proposals contained in this report have been subject to consultation via the area action partnerships and through meetings that were arranged with the trade unions and with representatives of the business ratepayers. Corporate overview and scrutiny will meet tomorrow to consider the proposals in this report, and the outcome of those discussions will be factored into the report that is presented to County Council on the 24th of February. Finally, Chair, I would note that there are a series of detailed recommendations set out in the report, with a summary of those recommendations to be made to Council set out at section 49. Members will note that the recommendations fulfil all of our statutory requirements with regards to the declaration of the surplus, or in this case the deficit on the collection fund, the adoption of a pay policy and the various treasury management policies and strategies, which include updates to our property investment strategy and updated position in terms of our prudential indicators. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. If I can then ask Councillor Shuttleworth, please, to ask your question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's about 14 years since costs to remove asbestos from County Hall was estimated to be £500,000 of floor, and that would also indicate now that would be probably about £1 million of floor multiplied by 7 floors, plus the demolition costs of the County Hall building, which appeared to be about £5 million at the last guesstimate. The suggestion that the parquet flooring, which is shown in page 187, and aluminium could be salvaged is actually not possible, as stated in MTFP, as the vast majority of the foam of the parquet flooring is sitting on top of asbestos, which would deem it unusable. The former highways lab cost £1.4 million to demolish, and that was after the asbestos was removed, and County Hall's 5 times the size of this. So my question is, in relation to the capital programme shown on page 187 of 2022-23, does the £500,000 mentioned there in demolition costs for County Hall include the removal of asbestos? And those figures I have given you, I can speak with some authority because I'm the only person within this meeting that was here at the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shuttleworth. And if I can ask Councillor Napier, Deputy Leader of the Council and Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Finance, to respond, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I thank Councillor Shuttleworth for his question? In responding and on reflection, I would like to remind members of the original outline business case for the new headquarters, which clearly demonstrated that remaining on the Akeley Head site and investing in trying to improve it to meet modern requirements was not only by far the most expensive option, with estimated capital costs of £76.5 million, but crucially would also have inhibited the ability to open up the site as a strategic employment site with all the benefits that it would bring in terms of more and better jobs. I can confirm that the £500,000 included in the capital budget for 22-23 is not the full demolition budget. It covers the initial preparatory work required for the demolition of County Hall only. There will be an additional budget provision required in 23-24, which will be considered as part of MTFP 12 and next year's budget report. The total estimated budget provision required for the demolition of County Hall, including the removal of asbestos, is circa £5 million. Can I thank Councillor Shuttleworth for his question, Chairman?
Thank you very much, Councillor Napier, and again, thank you to Councillor Shuttleworth for your question. And if we can then move on to the report and recommendations, and if I can ask Councillor Napier to speak, please.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I would like to commend the officers for what is a very comprehensive and thorough report. It is a report that once again expertly outlines the financial challenges we face and provides a solid foundation for us to make our budget setting decisions on. It sets out clearly the significant uncertainty that exists beyond next financial year as a result of the further delay to the comprehensive spending review and the so-called fair funding review. After a decade of austerity, which has placed immense pressure on local services, we have now been placed in a situation of responding to the unprecedented challenges of supporting our residents and communities and our businesses through this pandemic. The Council has consistently sought to protect vulnerable people over many years. It is why we still retain a council tax reduction scheme that protects all claimants and does not cap the support that can be received. We have continued to protect vulnerable people over the last year and provide strong and effective community leadership in an environment of constantly changing and often conflicting government advice. Decisions we have taken in previous years to protect frontline service delivery and the strong financial management of this council over many years has meant that we have been able to rise to these challenges despite the unfair and disproportionate cuts in funding that we have faced over many years. The pain and misery caused firstly by the coalition government and then the Conservative government as they imposed unnecessary and disproportionate cuts on authorities like ourselves and their attack on the welfare state has been immensely frustrating. It is staggering to think that the original ask as we sought to implement the first round of austerity imposed on us was a 123 million savings target for the council. Chairman, if it only they had stuck at that. Successive budgets and spending rounds have failed to deliver the funding needs to meet the needs of our residents and communities. Not only that, but the move towards equalising spending power across areas and the transfer of government responsibility for funding need, particularly that linked to deprivation to the local taxpayer, is abhorrent and inherently unfair. As this report outlines, by the end of this MTFP planning period, we forecast cuts will be close to 290 million, and we are currently forecasting that we will have lost around 3,000 posts from this council based on current savings plans. Chairman, in 2010, I stated that we were facing at least a decade of austerity, and many members across the floor accused me of over-exaggerating. Chairman, I wish I'd been wrong. What is more worrying to me, though, is how the Chancellor seeks to redress the public finances going forward. At the height of the banking crisis, public borrowing peaked at 170 billion. In the current year, public sector borrowing will be more than twice that and closer to 400 billion. I fear that this government will soon show its true colours and seek further and deeper cuts in funding to local government. And despite the rhetoric about levelling up, the greater burden of those cuts will fall on authorities like ourselves. And I'm sure members are more than aware local government is an unprotected area. Chairman, how can it be right that the government's own figures show that the core spending power per dwelling for Durham County Council is below the national average? If we were at the national average, we would have 45 million more funding each year than what we currently have. Durham is the 48th most deprived local authority area in the country out of 151 upper tier authorities. Yet the likes of Surrey, an affluent area, receives more funding than us. How can that be right or fair? Due to the deprivation challenges we face, we should be funded above the national average. Against that backdrop, Chairman, we have nevertheless managed the Council's finances prudently and effectively. This budget and our overall position in terms of the Council's finances is testament to all the officers employed by this Council. It is a set of budget proposals that I believe will be the envy of other councils. It is a budget that includes prudent council tax increases, resisting the Chancellor's call for us to increase council tax by 5% next year, but one which includes 22 million, Chairman, 22 million of additional investment in frontline services next year. Services that make a real difference to people's lives, from investment in climate change initiatives, in neighbourhood wardens, in winter maintenance and highways maintenance, amongst other things, to an extension of our council tax support top-up scheme. The budget includes an ambitious capital programme with 88 million of new investments added, including further significant investments in our leisure centres, in schools, including new builds, and in our highways infrastructure, bringing the total capital programme to 484 million over the next 4 years. I am particularly pleased that we are able to provide 400,000 to each Area Action Partnership next year to allow them to oversee local initiatives to tackle poverty and the local response to the pandemic, whilst also providing scope to invest in local initiatives in support of the Council's Towns and Villages programme. The investment in the AP will bring our commitment to towns and villages to 25 million, Chairman. A sum I believe will make a real difference and help tackle the significant challenges across many communities. Chairman, the budget is predicated on a 2.99% council tax increase next year, below the amount many authorities will have to increase their council tax by, and below the level recommended by this government. It includes a prudent use of reserves to balance the budget next year and to fund the additional investment in towns and villages. And I'm sure this council will be aware that we've utilised £100 million worth of reserves over the last 10 years, Chairman. In conclusion, I commend the proposals to Cabinet as set out in the report, but in doing so, and in light of the significant uncertainty that exists beyond next financial year, it is important that the Cabinet and Council are aware of this uncertainty when making the budget decisions. Chairman, I move the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Napier, and I'm very pleased to be able to second the medium-term financial plan revenue and capital budget for 2021-22. In a period of great uncertainty, as we still await the government's comprehensive spending review and fair funding review, and after almost a year of the coronavirus pandemic with all of its challenges, the Cabinet is proposing continued growth in frontline services, as we've heard, with additional investment prioritised in highways, keeping Durham clean, green and safe, and help for those most in need at this difficult time. Our capital programme continues to grow as well, with additional investments in leisure, schools and 500 new council houses and additional highways maintenance investments. And I'm also very pleased we're able to add 5 million to our Towns and Villages programme, as we've already heard, with local residents in our area action partnerships taking the decisions on how to spend these budgets. Over the past decade, County Durham's AAPs have, I believe, been an outstanding model in terms of decisions being taken locally, with thousands of projects supported across the whole of County Durham. I thank everyone involved, and I very much look forward to the AAPs continuing to do their work, and I'm pleased we've been able to boost their budgets. As we've already heard, we're also proposing a lower council tax increase than the expectation of a 5% increase, to me, it's appropriate that a lower increase is set, and that reflects the robust state of the finances, despite all the challenges that Councillor Napier has talked about over the last decade. It's a positive that we have robust finances across the council. Councillor Napier could have mentioned, but just this week there has been talk about up to 12 local authorities being in financial difficulties, and that's on top of some well-documented cases that have already been publicised over the last few years. The fact that Durham County Council is not in that position is very much, I think, a tantamount to the efforts of all the staff at the council, but also I have to say Councillor Napier as Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder, and I know we would all thank Councillor Napier for all his efforts over the last decade in terms of ensuring that this council's finances are strong and sound moving forward. So with that, I'm very pleased, as I mentioned, to second the recommendations as set out in the report. We've had notifications to speak then from Councillor Gunn and Councillor Patterson, so I'll bring in Councillor Gunn next.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Alwyn Gunn. I represent Willington and Hunwick Ward, but I'm the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People's Services. Chair, I want to thank the portfolio holder, and I want to thank the corporate directors, and I say directors for the current director and the previous director, for this report, but most of all, I want to commend them for their outstanding work over a period of relentless government cuts to local authorities' budgets. Cuts, cuts, and more cuts. And this appears to me to be a euphemism. Cuts, it's a word that has to be used. Savings are used, but it's actually cuts because there aren't any savings. There's no money to save. And in spite of this, despite facing £240 million, £240 million of budget cuts during a decade of a government policy called austerity, which in the beginning was implemented by a Lib Dem Tory coalition and continued forever after by the Tories. So in spite of all of that, this council has balanced its budget every single year. And this council has been prudent. Prudent, a word that means acting with and showing care for the future. That's what this council has done. And yet there's some silly stuff that's been going on. I call it silly stuff because there's sort of words that have been used like ferreting money away. Ferreting away must be the new Westminster euphemism for prudent. It's like savings are really cuts. So, having managed its finances,
okay. I fear that we may have lost Councillor Gunn in her prime. So I'm just going to give a few seconds just to see if we can get Councillor Gunn back. While I'm on that, I think Councillor Patterson, you've indicated that you didn't want to come in to speak. It was just a very delayed message coming through from the last item. So I think we're having a few technological issues. Okay,
Can I ask if I heard? I carried on.
Right, we're back with you're back with us, Councillor Gunn. So I'm sorry, it was a minute or two ago that it froze. So if you can try.
Can I just end with this then? That having managed its finances so well by being prudent, the council has been able to make investments, which are outlined in paragraph 18, and
Okay, I think we've lost Councillor Gunn again. Let us, if there's nobody else that's wanting to speak, I do need to note that before we agree the report and its recommendations, in line with constitutional requirements, each member of the Cabinet present is to indicate how they're voting on this item in order for this to be recorded in the minutes. So I therefore need to ask that if any Cabinet member is not in support of the report and its recommendations or is abstaining from voting, please indicate you wish to speak through the chat function. No indications have been received. So if I can ask if that's agreed first verbally, can I ask if the report is agreed?
Agreed.
And as I mentioned, no indications have been received, so I can therefore confirm that Cabinet members have unanimously agreed the report and its recommendations. Again, if I can thank everybody involved in that report and note, as Paul did mention at the start, that of course those Cabinet recommendations will then go forward to the Durham County Council meeting, which is taking place 2 weeks today, and it's at that meeting where the budget recommendations will be finalised. So thank you everyone. We will move on. Item 6 is the school admission arrangements for the academic year 2022-23. And if I can ask John Pearce, Corporate Director of Children and Young People Services, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. John Pearce, Corporate Director, Children and Young People Services. This report sets out the school admissions arrangements that are recommended alongside the oversubscription criteria for maintained and voluntary controlled schools, and this is for the 2022-23 academic year. The admissions arrangements must be agreed by Cabinet as a decision maker in line with the guidance by the end of February this year. It's also a requirement in the school admissions code that admissions authorities should agree the arrangements annually, and consultation is required if there are any major changes that are proposed, or if not, at a minimum of every 7 years. Consultation was undertaken in the autumn term 2020 on a proposed change to the oversubscription criteria, and that's set out in paragraph 4. The recommended change gives priority in the tie-break system to children who live nearest to school rather than those who would have to travel furthest to the next nearest school if they were unsuccessful in gaining a place. The proposed change would bring us into line with other councils in the area, and it also removes an anomaly that was created historically for a very specific reason, which is no longer valid. As part of the consultation process in the autumn term, 76 responses were received to the consultation. 26 of those responses were in favour of the proposed changes and 50 objected to them. The majority of those responses opposed to the changes came from a particular locality where parents were concerned about the impact it would have on places or allocation of places to a local academy. It should be noted that the proposal in the report doesn't apply to academies who, as their own admissions authority, set their own admissions criteria, and therefore the proposed changes in the report would not have an impact on those parents who raised those concerns. In addition, all governing bodies have considered the proposed admissions numbers for their school for the 22-23 intake, and those are detailed in Appendix 2 of the report for approval. The full admissions arrangements, which will be published if agreed, are included as Appendix 3, and the recommendation is set out in paragraph 8. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, John. If I can then invite Councillor Gunn, please, to speak, hopefully back with us now. Councillor Gunn.
Yep, thank you, Chair, and I hope it doesn't go off again. I have no idea what's happening, but it's snowing very, very heavily here, as it probably is elsewhere. I'm pleased to present this report on the Council's proposed admission arrangements for the 2022-23 academic year. These arrangements have been produced following a consultation with schools, other admission authorities, governing bodies, and with parents. The consultation for the 2022-23 admission arrangements included a proposal to amend the tiebreaker in the Council's published oversubscription criteria for admission to community secondary schools from September 2022. The current oversubscription criteria were introduced in 2011-12. The fifth criterion is, and I quote, applicants to their nearest school. Those children who have applied for a place at the nearest school to their home address, measured by the shortest working route. Unquote. So if some children considered within this criterion cannot get a place at the preferred school, the following tiebreaker is applied, and priority will be given to those who would otherwise have to travel the furthest distance to the next nearest school. This was introduced to ensure that pupils living in remote rural areas who could not get a place at their nearest school would not have an unreasonable distance to travel to the next nearest school with a place available. However, schools in rural areas have sufficient places available. Secondary schools with a shortage of places tend to be in more urban areas, such as Chesney Street in Durham City. Consequently, consultation was carried out to change the tiebreaker to, and I quote, applicants to their nearest school, those children who live closest to the nearest school to their home address, measured by the shortest walking route, unquote. Although the majority of those who responded did not support the proposal, most of those lived in fence houses, Bournemouth and Lumley, who felt that they would have greater difficulty in getting a place at Parkview School than they do currently. However, the proposed change applies to only community secondary schools or those academies who use the Council's oversubscription criteria. For the school year 2021-22, Parkview School amended its oversubscription criteria as it is at liberty to do so with it being an academy, so that they are no longer the same as the councils. One of the changes made is for the tiebreaker within the nearest school criterion to be that which the council is considering introducing for the 2022-23 academic year. Consequently, regardless of whether the council agrees to the proposed changes to its oversubscription criteria, it will have no impact on children whose parents wish for them to attend Park View School. Apart from changes to admission numbers for a small number of schools and academies, no other changes were proposed to the admission arrangements agreed by Cabinet in February 2020 for the 2021-22 academic year. The admission arrangements ensure that as many parents as possible are provided with a place at one of their preferred schools. Durham regularly achieves in excess of 95% of pupils receiving their first preference of primary and secondary school. This comfortably exceeds the first preference percentage met by other councils, both regionally and nationally. Education remains a key priority for the council, and the positive outcomes we seek to achieve are contributed to by pupils being provided with places in schools their parents and carers want them to attend. I recommend the report and the decision that it asks Cabinet to agree. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gunn. Can we have a seconder to the report, please? Councillor Hovels.
Thank you, Chairman. As you said, Councillor Hovels, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Health. It is a mandatory requirement, the school admission code. It exists to ensure fairness and equality and in school admission arrangements. An impact assessment of the admission arrangements on specific groups has been undertaken. Chairman, I formally second the report and the 3 recommendations outlined within this report. I formally second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hovels. Can I ask if there's anybody else wishing to speak? If not, can we move to agreeing the report and recommendations? Please indicate any dissent through the chat function. Can I ask if the report is agreed?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. And there's no indications, so I can therefore confirm the report is agreed. So thank you. If we can then move to item 7 on the agenda, which is the proposal to amalgamate Durham Community Business College and Findoon Community College into a single secondary school on the site of Durham Community Business College from the 12th of April 2021. Again, if I can ask John Pearce, Corporate Director of Children and Young People Services, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in March 2020, Cabinet agreed a proposal to start a statutory consultation process which would amalgamate Findoon Community College and Durham Community Business College onto a single site at DCBC. The 2 schools had been in a formal arrangement known as the Durham Federation since 2009, and both were subsequently subject to directive academy orders from the Department for Education as a result of inadequate Ofsted judgments. Following quite a protracted period, the Department for Education were unable to identify a sponsor to take on the 2 schools, and this was in the main due to sustainability and standards issues across both sites. As a result, the Department for Education agreed to revoke the academy orders, but did so on the condition that one of the schools was closed and that they were consolidated onto a single site. There was a short delay in the consultation following the agreement in Cabinet in March 2020, which was created by the pandemic and the lockdown period during which schools were closed in the summer term last year. And the consultation restarted on the 5th of October and ran from the 5th of October to the 15th of November 2020. During that consultation period, 9 responses were received, 5 were in favour of the proposal and 4 against the proposal. The responses that did not support the proposal did not put forward educational reasons to explain the reasons why the proposal was not the correct approach to take forward. As a result of that first phase of consultation, consideration was given to the responses, and the proposal then moved into the statutory representation period in line with the statutory process. That began on the 26th of November 2020 for a 4-week period, and during this statutory representation period, no responses were received. In educational terms, the children accessing the Durham Federation have now all been educated on the DCBC site since 2019, and therefore there will be no further direct educational impact for those pupils as a result of this recommendation. And the proposal is to officially close Findune Community College from the 12th of April 2021. In the March 2020 Cabinet report, a commitment was made to find a sustainable future community use for the Findune site. That commitment is highlighted again in paragraph 18 of the report, and plans can be developed further if Cabinet agree the recommendation set out in this report. The detail in the report between paragraphs 26 and 39 describe the factors the Cabinet as the decision maker must take into consideration as part of the statutory process in relation to the closure proposal, and the recommendation in the report for Cabinet is set out in paragraph 9. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Again, if I can invite Councillor Gunn to speak to the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to propose this report, which asks Cabinet to agree the proposal to amalgamate Durham Community Business College and Findune Community College into a single secondary school on the site of Durham Community Business College from the 12th of April 2021. The report alludes to the fact that as a result of both schools failing Ofsted inspections, the Department for Education issued a directive academy order in the expectation that the schools would be sponsored by a multi-academy trust. However, over a protracted period of time, the DFE failed to secure a sponsor, and as a consequence, the DFE agreed to return the school to a local authority maintain control on condition that the URN of one school, that's the unique number of one school, was removed. The report goes on to outline the financial and educational difficulties the two schools which form the Durham Federation have faced in recent years, which led to both of them being judged requires improvement by Ofsted in 2019. It's believed that the best way of improving education outcomes and easing the pressure on the budget will be most effectively achieved by amalgamating the two schools on one site. Reference is also made in the report to the fact that in an attempt to address the serious financial challenges brought about by a significant fall in pupil numbers over recent years, which, I have to say, in part, can be attributed to the failings of the DFE to secure a sponsor, and also to raise the educational attainment, all pupils have been taught on the site of Durham Community Business College since September 2018. The report, as the corporate director has said, also indicates in paragraph 18 that the council will work with the local community to find a sustainable approach for the Findune site that protects and expands on existing community use. We realise that this is an important aspect of this report, and if the Cabinet decides to agree the proposed amalgamation, that will enable a focus on future community use as the next phase of the process. The report details the consultation undertaken by the Council on the proposal to amalgamate the two schools and the responses received to that consultation. Although there's been a very limited response to the consultation and the statutory notice, the majority of responses received were in favour of the proposal. I recommend the report, Chair, and the decision that it asks Cabinet to agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gunn. If we can have a seconder to the report, please.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Carl Marshall, Cabinet Lead for Economic Regeneration. I'm happy to second the report. As Councillor Gunn has stated, both schools have recently struggled with their Ofsted inspections and both face extremely difficult financial challenges. I think the fact the council continue to work with the local community to find a sustainable approach to the Findoon site that helps to protect and expand on the existing community and leisure offers is something that should be looked at positively by the local community. And I'm really pleased that commitment is still in there from the authority. The responses to the consultation didn't lead to any other options being proposed, and I believe the proposal is the best way of enabling Durham Community Business College to provide an effective curriculum for the communities it serves. I'm therefore happy to formally second the recommendations outlined in the report, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Can I ask, please, if anybody else wishes to speak to the report? If not, as ever, if there's any dissent, can you please indicate that through the chat function? Can I ask if the report and recommendations are agreed?
Great.
Thank you. And there's no indications of dissent, so again, I can therefore confirm that the report is agreed. So if we move then to item 8 on the agenda, proposal to enlarge Elmore Hall School from the 1st of September 2021 and to close Windleston School as a registered school on the 31st of August 2021. Again, if I can ask John Pearce, Corporate Director of Children and Young People's Services, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The report seeks approval for the expansion of Elmore Hall School to operate across 2 sites and to close Windleston School as a registered school with effect from August 2021. Both schools are special schools that support children and young people with social, emotional and mental health needs, and the pupils come from across the county. Windleston was judged to be inadequate by Ofsted in November 2019 and as a result was subject to a directive academy order issued by the Secretary of State. We've worked with the Department for Education and it was agreed the proposal recommended in the report will be the preferred option as it provides a sustainable future for the school operating across 2 sites as a single operator. The proposal means that there will be minimal impact for pupils while securing the quality of leadership and teaching that is required to support young people at Windleston, and this is in line with the Ofsted action plan. Critically, it also enables a strategic approach to specialist provision to continue and enables the council to continue to have oversight of the future direction for special school provision in the county. As a special school, there is a significant budget pressure within Windleston, which manifests itself through the high needs block of the dedicated schools grant, and an action plan is in place to resolve that. And this proposal will provide some beneficial impact to support that action plan going forward. The consultation on the proposal was carried out under the statutory requirements between the 5th of October and 15th of November 2020, and consultation was undertaken with governors, staff, parents and the wider community. 20 responses were received to the consultation. 14 of those 20 responses were in favour of the proposal and 6 were opposed to it. Those in support of the proposal felt that Elmore Hall as a good school would be able to raise standards and outcomes for the pupils at Windleston, and this would benefit all pupils accessing this provision. The small number of representations that opposed the proposal did identify some concerns that creating a larger school may have a detrimental impact on children's learning and progress, and we will be very conscious of this as we move forward and be taking actions to mitigate any potential risks in this area if the proposal is agreed. The proposal then moved on to the statutory representation period, with the notice issued on the 26th of November for a 4-week period, and during that period no representations were received to the proposal. In paragraphs 34 to 46 of the report, the factors that Cabinet must take into account as a decision maker are set out in some detail, and the recommendation for Cabinet is in paragraph 9 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Again, if I can ask Councillor Gunn to speak to the reports, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to propose this report, which asks Cabinet to agree the proposal to enlarge Elmore Hall School from the 1st of September 2021 and to close Windleston as a registered school on the 31st of August 2021. The report alludes to the fact that as a result of Windleston failing its Ofsted inspection, an academy order would normally be issued by the Secretary of State. However, if a local authority takes steps to close the inadequate school and can do so in a satisfactory manner that disadvantages none of the pupils currently attending the school, the DfE can choose to withhold the issuing of an academy order. The report proposes the closure of Windleston as a registered school, but as part of the same consultation, enlarging Ellamore Hall Special School to operate across its own site and the site of Windleston School. In this way, both sites will continue to be used so that students currently attending each site will still be educated on a site that is familiar to them for as long as this is suitable for their progress and for their well-being. The local authority believes that, particularly in the case of social, emotional, mental health schools, the needs of vulnerable learners can be best accommodated by a coordinated strategic approach to pupil placement across the entire county. This would ensure that Durham resources and funding would remain available for the benefit of Durham children. The report goes on to outline the financial difficulties Windleston is facing. It's believed that the best way of improving education outcomes and easing the pressure on the budget will be most effectively achieved by enlarging Ellamore Hall Special School to operate across its own site and the site of Windleston School, and by closing Windleston as a registered school. The report details the consultation undertaken by the council on the proposal to amalgamate the two schools and the responses received to that consultation. Although there has been a limited response to the consultation and statutory notice, the majority of responses received were in favour of the proposal, and those not in support of it did not put forward any educational reasons why the proposal should not be implemented. I recommend the report and the decision it asks Cabinet to agree. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gunn. If we can ask for a seconder to the report, please. Councillor Shaw. Sorry, is Councillor Hovels, are you seconding the report? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think what's clear from the report is that no pupils will have their education disrupted. It'll be improved and the standards will improve in terms of teaching and learning, and I think that's what's important. We've always got to remember it's about children's education when we make these decisions and making sure that we're getting the best outcomes for the pupils and the people involved. And obviously the consultation was really important, so it's disappointing that the numbers that have come forward, but the recommendations very clear, and this morning I'm happy to move the recommendations outlined within the report. Chair.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's anybody else wishing to speak on the report, please? If not, as ever, if any dissent can be indicated through the chat function, please. Can I ask if the report is agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. No indications have been received, so I can confirm that the report is agreed. If we can then move on to item 9 on the agenda, which is a corporate environmental statement, management system and governance. If I can ask Alan Patrickson, Corporate Director of Neighbourhoods and Climate Change, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. This report looks to introduce 3 connected provisions to help structure how we can continue and to accelerate the environmental improvement in our own activities. This includes continuation of the focus on carbon reduction and also climate change, but also encompassing wider aspects of good environmental management. The Council already has a significant track record of really good environmental management, and this report in many ways is a bringing together, a restatement and also a reinforcement of principles which in many cases are already embedded in our ongoing work. So the first of these 3 provisions is a short but succinct set of environmental principles set out in a corporate environmental statement. Now, this brings together current and future priorities, focusing on areas where we can have the most impact as a council, while also being broad enough to encompass future changes. The second provision is the adoption of an auditable environmental management system to wrap around this statement, with external assessment leading to an accreditation, and this is through the Investors in the Environment programme. And as the report notes, we've already had an initial audit against this programme where we placed it silver level, which is not far away from the top level. The top level accreditation in this scheme, of course, is green rather than gold. The final part of this report is the reinforcement of governance arrangements. This will be covered by the establishment of a net zero board, obviously named to reinforce our climate ambitions. This board will oversee the delivery of the environmental management system, as well as the ongoing work with the Climate Change Emergency Response Plan. The board would also work very closely alongside the independent chairs of the County Durham Environment Partnerships and its subgroups. So, Chair, the recommendations in the report reflecting these three provisions are set out in paragraph 12. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. If we can then move to the report and recommendations, can I ask Councillor Stevens to speak, please?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Brian Stevens and I'm the portfolio holder for Neighbourhoods and Partnerships. As Cabinet members will be aware, this council already has a strong track record in environmental performance, and we have been recognised nationally as leaders in the field. The proposals set out in this report build on these successes by strengthening our systems and governance and putting in place audible standards and external certification. Chairman, once again, this will put Durham County Council and our partners that we work with at the leading edge of environmental management within local government. Can I move the report and the recommendations as printed?
Thank you. If we can have a seconder report to the report, please. Councillor Hobbles.
Thank you, Chairman. As a council, it sets out our responsibility to incorporate our environmental commitments into all our organisational duties and core values. The introduction of an overarching statement will provide immediate and long-lasting benefits by reinforcing and underlining commitment to tackling climate change. Chairman, I am delighted to formally second the report this morning.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's anybody else wishing to speak? If not, again, if people can indicate any dissent through the chat function. Can I ask if the report is agreed, please?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. And there's no indications, so I can confirm that the report is agreed. If we then move to item 10, Council Homes Build Programme Phase 1, if I can ask Amy Harhoff, Corporate Director of Regeneration, Economy and Growth, to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide Cabinet with an overview of the arrangements that have been put in place for the delivery of the Council House Build Programme, which was approved by Cabinet in October 2020. This report includes details of the first proposed phase of those 500 homes which were committed in October, and also sets out some further details in terms of the delivery arrangements and next steps. As set out in the report, I wanted to highlight to members that, of course, this is part of our ongoing programme. For Council House Build, we are delivering and investing £70 million in new homes for affordable homes across the county. And that £70 million investment will also be subject to the principles of our County Durham Pound principles, where we ensure that that investment is as strongly as possible to the benefit of the county and in line with all social value principles. The report sets out from section 12 onwards the proposed phases and details for phase 1 of the site selection. Draw your attention to section 16, which just includes some of the key criteria that we've used in assessing the sites for that first phase, and that includes within it the need and demand for affordable homes, particularly for older persons in the area, the council's land availability, Also, it includes a review of demand for the registered providers to ensure that the council is providing where there are gaps in existing provision. And we also review the key areas such as access to funding, such as Section 106, and of course Homes England grant, which is a requirement of this fund. We also, as always with housing, look to ensure that these sites are integrated as part of regeneration opportunities, because we know that new homes are absolutely critical to a broader regeneration strategy. From Section 20, we set out in summary the 7 sites that are proposed in this first phase of the 500 homes. Within that report, you'll also see the details from Appendix 2 to Appendix 8, which set out the details of each site and show how that aligns also with the provision in the area. Overall, this programme is proposed to be 155 homes delivered by the council, but we propose that these will be part of broader sites delivering over 270 homes in total as part of this first programme, as part of a mixed site. The recommendations within the report are included in section 9 of this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Can I then move to the report and recommendations? And if I can ask Councillor Shaw to speak to the reports, please.
Thank you, Chair. In October, we discussed the strategic rationale for building new council homes for rent, and Cabinet agreed to put in place the funding, the land, and provided the political determination and ambition to invest in providing new homes for rent for those in housing needs within the county. Today is another important milestone, and Cabinet have been asked to consider approving 7 sites across the county on which to build new homes. Those 7 sites have been carefully identified through our targeted delivery plans and selected as outstanding demand exists in the area, and also because the site location can provide a sustainable development. Members will know you're especially interested in ensuring that the council is focusing on providing much needed homes for our elderly in our communities, and I am also pleased to say that strong demand for such homes exists in all of the areas served by the 7 sites selected. I can tell members that the council homes build will be concentrating wherever possible on homes to meet the needs of the elderly as its priority. This is much more than a housing development story. This is about the council's commitment to supporting our local communities. This is Townsend Village's investment planning. This is levelling up. This is about using the £70 million that will be spent to support local businesses, either directly through the build process or indirectly through the building supply chains. And importantly, this is about creating opportunities for people to gain new skills and employment. When we succeed in doing these things, we will also be supporting the longer term recovery from the impacts of the pandemic, which will be absolutely vital in our economy. It is very important that when we provide quality homes, it also has excellent housing management services for the new tenants when they take up their tenancies. And I want to make sure that our commitment to quality is central to the work we do over the coming months and years. I'm pleased to say that behind the scenes, the other important areas of work that need to be put in place are in train, and I look forward to receiving reports on these matters at the appropriate time. The report clearly tells us that building new homes will take time, and that we need to ensure that we do things properly and have viability criteria that schemes must pass in order that we press the green light to start the building programme. I must admit to being impatient, but that impatience is driven by a desire to see these quality homes built as quickly as possible, because every day we take between now and the people being given the keys to their new homes is another day when those same people are living in homes that no longer meet their needs. So today I'm delighted to move the recommendations in paragraph 9 and look forward to receiving further reports on positive progress in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. If we can have a seconder to the reports, please. Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. These really are exciting times, and I'd like to just echo Councillor Shaw's remarks about the importance of the new house building programme and the wider investment that the council's making in communities. I'm pleased to hear that this initiative will be used to help young people gain new skills and access to employment opportunities. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating impact on parts of our economy, and it appears that young people are feeling the brunt of this impact. I know this initiative will help people who are in housing need gain access to good quality new homes, and that in itself can be a life changer for many. But when we receive progress reports on the building programme, we'll also be looking out for the information that tells us what added social value these developments are having and the significant investment that have been delivered across our communities. Chair, it gives us great pleasure to second Councillor Shaw's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Hovels wants to come in as well. Councillor Hovels.
Thank you, Chairman. Access to good quality housing is fundamental to our well-being of people of all ages, and we especially need to consider the elderly. And people tell me 2-bedroom bungalows is what they wish for. With these proposals, the Council is also demonstrating its commitment to building strong and stable local communities. Chairman, this morning's the first step that this council is taking to building our homes for our residents. Many residents still think within our communities that the homes that was transferred are still council homes. So I think this will help put some clarity within our communities. Our new building programme investing the 70 million in the new homes provides not only essential new homes, but will support directly the ongoing economic and community recovery from this COVID pandemic. Chairman, I'm delighted with the report this morning, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank everybody who's been working behind the scenes to get us to where we are now. And like Councillor Shaw says, the quicker we can move on this, the better for our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hovels. If there's nobody else wishing to come in to speak, if we can turn to agreeing the report and recommendations. Again, if there's any dissent, please indicate through the chat function. Can I ask if the report is agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you, and there's no indications, so I can confirm that the report is agreed. So if we can move on then to item 11, update on commercial head leases. If I can ask Amy Harhoff again to present this report, I'll then ask Councillor Temple to ask your question after that, please. Amy.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on commercial head leases previously approved by Cabinet and under the Council's property investment strategy. The Council's investment property is part of a wider approach to attracting more and better jobs across the county and ensuring that our economy can reach its full potential. Some of those economic regeneration objectives have been at the forefront of the decisions today, and that has included creating in excess of 1,000 new jobs and also improvements to place and environment in those areas where new investments are created. We've also seen that this strategy has been particularly important at the times of the pandemic, where our economy has been particularly affected and jobs and business at risk. The Council does proactively target a number of other opportunities to support the economy, and it's important that this investment strategy and the approach to head leases is seen in that context, whether it's our investment in towns and villages, our approach to supporting business, or the strategic bids that we make to central government. Over the last 10 years across the country, a number of local authorities have sought to offset the impact of austerity and improve finances through commercial arrangements, including investments outside of their areas on commercial grounds and to support with wider investments. In terms of Durham County Council, on an annual basis, as part of the budget process, the Council does approve the property investment strategy, and that strategy provides a framework for decision making when the Council considers such commercial and economic investments. The Council's approach to the property investment strategy is set out in more detail in this report through sections 29 to 32. And as we set out in the report, our approach is a balanced one, which is not purely about financial return, but it is targeted to stimulate jobs, growth, both those that are protected and those that are new to the economy. To date, the Council hasn't deemed that any freehold purchase opportunities would represent value for money in this context. In the report, we set out that there are 5 head lease arrangements that have been approved by Cabinet to date. They are set out in summarised in section 27 of this report. Head lease arrangements involve undertaking long-term lease, often with an institutional investment, such as a large pension fund, at an agreed rate per square metre, and then the local authority pays that to the developer and lets the spaces. In these circumstances, this gives the certainty and continuity to the investor and the certainty to the community of the delivery and, importantly, the occupation of the development. Cases are developed based on the circumstances and the details of the overall rental levels which the council will forecast to receive, and a business case is detailed accordingly. Because the information is commercially sensitive, this means that Cabinet reports at that time are therefore exempt from publication to ensure that commercial negotiations can be protected and that the best value can be delivered for public funding. The full details of the 5 sites and decision making is included in this report. The decision making is included in section 34 to 69. The 5 sites that we have agreed head leases for, as detailed in the report, are 2 sites for Freeman Reach, Drum Industrial Estate, Milburn Gate and Stayshield Place. And overall, it's forecast that over 1,000 jobs have been created, with 750 of those safeguarded. As set out in the report, all developments agreed to date are usually forecast between a 30 to 40-year period. These are long-term investments and are confident that those generations will still be achieved over time. The report also highlights that the council has generated a surplus across properties to date, with 0.250 million in the NTFP. Finally, I just highlight in specific reference to Milburn Gate. This will deliver a significant number of jobs, but it's also important to highlight that this also benefits the wider regeneration of the area and generates additional business rates for spend in the community. Chair, the recommendations of this report are set out in section 19. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Can I then ask Councillor Temple to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to follow up my motion to Council, which called for today's report to be provided to Cabinet. I'm very pleased that despite the more pessimistic scenario used in the modelling, the Milburn Gate development is still projected to pay a higher net rental income than the lease payments that the Council has. The need for such updated modelling, however, does show us that the decision-making process is not without any risk. Modelling is an estimate, as we've seen in COVID. What really counts is the up-to-date figures that people get. And that's why it's very important that the performance of such major investments, I estimate the 3 that have actually been signed to date to be in the region of £170 million, is monitored very regularly and closely by Cabinet, and so information is made available to both other councillors and the public at large, because these are probably the biggest investments that this council has made. So can the portfolio holder for finance outline how and how often Cabinet will monitor the ongoing financial performance of each of these head leases against their expected outcomes over the coming decades? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Temple, and if I can invite Councillor Napier to respond, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I thank Councillor Temple for his question? I also welcome the fact that the latest updated modelling for the Milburn Gate development would indicate a surplus position across the life of this head lease, even though that is not the sole purpose of the deal. I would refer Councillor Temple to the management arrangements underpinning the property investment strategy we have just approved as part of the budget report set out in the papers at page 268, where it clearly states that any variation from budgeted performance will be reported as part of the quarterly forecast of outturn reports to Cabinet and scrutiny, and that if performance is lower than originally forecast, considerations will be given to opportunities to improve performance. Active management of the portfolio on a day-to-day basis will be undertaken by the Council's corporate property and land and finance teams in line with the proposed corporate landlord model. Can I thank Councillor Temple for his question, Chairman?
Thank you very much, Councillor Napier. And if I can now move to the report and recommendations, can I invite Councillor Marshall to speak to the reports, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Councillor Marshall, the Cabinet Member for Economic Regeneration for the County Council. I think that in isolation, this report identifies an impressive portfolio of sites which has and continues to bring income into the council. The jobs created or retained in the county have provided stability and growth in terms of our economic performance, as well as the wider impacts that it creates in terms of spend. However, taken in a wider context, it shows a progressive, well-managed and outcome-focused council that is prepared to take calculated and well-managed risks in driving the economy and positioning Durham as a place in which developers and investors choose to do business. Over the last 10 years, we've built a reputation for developing strong partnerships. This only happens if we are prepared to get round a table and be part of the solution. Our covenant and head lease on the two properties at Freeman's Reach not only helped regenerate a part of the city that was tired and becoming derelict, it helped retain hundreds of jobs in the city, keeping the Passport Office and the NS&I from a potential relocation outside of the county, and with it the obvious loss of spending power of those staff from the city centre businesses. The deal with L&G was the first done in the North East for over 10 years with an international investment fund and put Durham on the map as a place of interest to developers and investors alike. The initial investment required to do this deal was nothing. We collect the rent, pay off our loan and keep the profit, not to mention the income from business rates. With the retention of the Passport and NS&I, however, came the big problem of an empty, unusable liability in the heart of the city on the edge of the World Heritage Site. We needed to find solutions that would regenerate our city and remove what would have certainly become a liability going forward. Again, our covenant was proved the key to unlock this site. Working with the developers and yet another international investment fund, we have now got an impressive mixed-use development coming out of the ground, which will bring a new hotel, new office, cinema and new homes into the area, as well as the many jobs. We have a business plan which currently, even through COVID and the issues that we have seen in the property market, shows that we will continue to make a profit when the scheme's finished. Again, this has been achieved by not spending a penny of council funding. It must be said that these are long-term deals and that with all property deals, it's not possible to see into the future in regard to what will happen. But we'll know that once the lease dates expire, the property and the value will fall back to the council. We'll own the freehold of the land and the property, which will provide a significant value to the council. So as well as creating jobs, resolving significant regeneration issues and bringing both income and business rates into the council, we've also established a reputation for prudent but forward-thinking working practices, which will continue to attract investors and development to Durham. As well as the city, we've adopted an approach to ensure this regeneration and economic development will work right across the county. Newton Aycliffe and Drum in Chesley Street identify this in practice. We take a risk management approach. Unlike many councils, we've not acquired property. Unlike most authorities, we stay clear of high risk property like retail or pure leisure schemes. I would like to see more of this going forward. Opportunities will continue to knock on our door, and I'd like to ensure we continue to support those schemes that bring benefits to our residents going forward. We'll continue to be mindful of the changing markets, of ensuring we manage the risks, but without this approach, the future is one where we will potentially lose businesses, we'll have more sites derelict, and where financially we'll be worse off as a council. Chair, these schemes will create much needed jobs in the county, provide an income from rates, and help to provide hope for all of our communities. I therefore ask you to note the report and ensure that this work is celebrated for the outcomes it has created, and that we send out the message that we continue to be open to innovative thinking, new ways of working and solving problems that stop our progress. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. If we can then have a seconder to the report, please. Councillor Napier.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, this council has demonstrated over many years its strong track record of prudent financial management. We do not and never will play fast and loose with the public finances and take unnecessary risks. Quite rightly, our property investment strategy focuses on regeneration and job retention and job creation. We take measured and prudent risks in our investment decisions and take a long-term view. We are not about seeking high returns on high-risk ventures. Our maximum exposure in terms of gross head lease cost is well within the tolerable levels of an organisation of our size. As the report outlines, all head lease arrangements entered into to date are still forecast to return a surplus for the council, even factoring in the short-term impacts of the pandemic, but that is not the sole point of those arrangements. More importantly, they have allowed the retention of jobs and the creation of new jobs, jobs that otherwise would have been lost. We have also retained significant business rates revenues and our forecast additional council tax revenues once the Milburn Gate development is delivered. Chairman, for the reasons I spoke about at council last month, the report does not, and nor should it disclose, any commercially sensitive information with regards to the lease and sublease arrangements on individual deals. I am happy that officers involved in negotiating these deals are striking the right balance, that the council's cabinet is fully involved and provided with the right level of detail in terms of the risks and issues associated with each deal, as well as the benefits in terms of job creation. We will continue to monitor these head leases and the financial performance of each as we go forward. Chairman, for these reasons, I'm happy to note the report and second the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Napier. Can I ask if there's anyone else wishing to speak on this report, please? If not, if we can move to the report and recommendations. If there's any dissent, please indicate through the chat function. Can I ask if the report is agreed, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. And there's no indications, therefore I can confirm the report is agreed. Item 12, any other business? I've not been notified of any other business, so that therefore concludes the business for the meeting. Can I thank everyone for taking part this morning, and to those members of the public and media who have watched this meeting. Thank you.